Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking and Speech. This is lesson 7. Wow, we've done so much already, huh? All right. The reading for the last unit was very short, but I thought it really explained what a dramatic pause was. And so I hope everybody read it and now understand that if you have a really big main point, it's so important to pause before you introduce it or between two different subjects. If you're going to change, a transition pause is helpful for the audience so that they know that information is finished. I'm moving on to my next information. And of course, it gives you a chance to look at your notes. I don't know if you remember last time I used little post-it notes. Look at your notes and take a moment to organize what you're thinking about. Okay, today we're going to talk about filler words. As I mentioned to you before, I'm not a professional editor of videos, and I also wanted you to see all of the mistakes and, well, not even all, but most of the mistakes, and to see that being embarrassed about this kind of stuff is less important than your information that you're presenting publicly. Okay? So I've left in a lot of mistakes, uh, you know, uh, right, all of those things are all present in my lessons because I haven't written a script. I don't believe in writing a script for teaching partly because I have main points already up in front of me on the screen, partly because I'm not going to sit and write out a script just because that's not my personal style. That may be your personal style and you should practice with your script. The main reason I don't use a script, I use points, is because you can't read while you speak to an audience if you're going to be making eye contact. We mentioned before this is a Western style. Eye contact may not be part of your culture. You can leave me a message in the comment below. No, in Taiwan or wherever, we don't use eye contact in presentations. Reading is acceptable. And that's fine. My point is never what you should do because everybody should behave like Westerners. My point is when dealing with Westerners, you should know that culturally, not making eye contact means I don't really believe what I'm saying. Or I'm so nervous, which is lack of confidence, which means this information may or may not be valuable. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking my information is valuable, but my presentation skills are bad. I understand. And I'm sure other people understand. But when we're talking about business and we're talking about becoming better at what we're doing, then we have to pay attention to the things that can help us improve. And one of those things is not reading and making eye contact with the Westerners in our audience. Okay, right? That's fair. That's fair. All right, so my point was I don't write things out. I have points up and I have to make sure I hit all my points. So you will see occasionally my eyes will go over to my sheet and then I will come back and I will say, all right, well now here's my next point. So when you're doing a presentation, you may have, when I say different subjects and pausing between those, it's really up to you what you feel is more comfortable. If every point is its own individual subject, then I would pause before introducing that next point. Of course, you may have slides in the background, you may have a clicker, you may be talking about visuals. I'll do a class about that because there's a lot of vocabulary that's useful for visuals and introducing visuals and talking about visuals. We'll get to that. But for now, what I'm talking about, you have to decide. You have to decide, is every point its own new information? Then I would pause before introducing it. If every point isn't getting its own introduction, then I would just keep a certain pace so that it's not all coming together at the same time, but has a certain natural movement. So think about what you want, and when you're practicing, do different things, right? Pause in different places and see how you feel when you watch it. Another reason to practice and record it, video, not audio, video, is to listen for filler words. What are some filler words? Eh, and, and, like, all right, okay. So, all of these small little words that we use, yeah, you should first identify which ones you use. You may notice I use all right, so, okay. Those are the 4 I usually use, and that's because I'm also thinking about what I want to say next and deciding quickly which point I want to touch upon. So I will use those little words. Of course, those little words are also part of common speech, and sometimes I use them because, so meaning because. If you do A, so you should do B. Because you did A, so you should do B. So meaning, all right, meaning, I'm not always using those as filler words. I'm sometimes using them as actual words. All right. When I do the subtitles, I will erase or take out all right, so when it's not part of the meaning. So if suddenly those words do not appear there, please know that's because it was a filler word and I shouldn't have said it. Let's learn what you should do. So first, record yourself doing your presentation with points, not with sentences. If you're reading your presentation with sentences, then I want to tell you that you should memorize those, and in order to remember the order, you should just have little post-it notes or cards that have just points. Point 1, for me, in my filler presentation, it says, identify how often you use your filler words. That's all it says. So to help you identify how often you use filler words, you can't be reading. You have to be trying to explain the point. When you're trying to explain the point, you're trying to think quickly. When you're thinking quickly, you are using filler words to move through the word part and the thinking part. I don't know how better to explain it. So, filler word. So you have to record yourself not reading, and you can use, if you don't have a presentation in the next anytime soon, then feel free to use one of my speaking challenges, giving an opinion. On the worksheet, on the homework sheets, there's a speaking section. You can answer those questions. If you don't want to do a whole presentation, that's fine. Just say what the question is, say what your answer is, and if you can, try to make a follow-up question that you would ask someone if you were talking to someone. Just like I'm pretending I'm talking to you, you should be pretending you're talking to someone. It's not easy, but it's helpful when you are talking to someone, and then you can use all of these tricks that I've taught you. Great. All right. So first you have to identify how often you use them. You should know which ones you use, because then you can change them. What do I mean? I mean, if I use so, all right, okay, and instead of using those, the reason they're so annoying is because you keep saying the same thing again and again. And I know it's not part of your speech. I know it's just you making time to find the next word. That means if you change the word that's your filler word, if you change it with a few other words, people won't notice it as much, and if you can't break the habit of always using those filler words, at least reduce it a lot by using different vocabulary. Instead of so, I can say I mean, or that therefore, or I mean, there's lots of words to change for so. On the other hand, for the word okay, all right, right, there aren't that many choices. You have to drop them. You have to stop saying them. Okay. Moving on to number 2. Instead of saying okay, moving on to number 2, I should say nothing. Just pause. That pause means to audiences, a new section is starting. So, again, you're going to notice all of my filler words because we're doing this filler word presentation. All right. Another way to stop using so many filler words is to slow down. Part of the reason you're using filler words is you're moving, you're talking, you're making noises with your mouth, your brain hasn't caught up and doesn't know what to say next. That's fine. Slow down. If you're speaking more slowly, you have more time to think about the next thing you want to say. Great way to catch up and get to the next point.